Good morning. A warm welcome to the Humanist Community in Silicon Valley Sunday Forum, to those joining us on Zoom and to those joining us on Facebook. My name is Ray Sunby, President of the Humanist Community. The Humanist Community is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. Humanism is a secular and reality-based philosophy of life that affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. We value freedom, health, happiness, fairness, compassion, and using science and reason to acquire and apply knowledge. If these words describe your thinking, we invite you to become a member of the Humanist Community, if you have not yet done so. Membership forms are available on our website, humanists.org. A special welcome to those who are with us for the first time. We invite you to continue listening to our weekly forums and other events. You can find all our events listed on the website, humanists.org. Please aid us in continuing to present these forums by donating to the Humanist Community. You can find out how to donate to our organization on our website, humanists.org.
Okay, good morning. My name is Alex Havasi. I'm Vice President of the Humanist Community. This morning, our topic is the California gubernatorial recall election. I'll go into some detail about the hows and whys, and when my comments end, the forum will be. I'll open the forum for general discussion for all those all those on Zoom can unmute themselves when they want to talk. I want to go into a brief history of the recall in California. This was part of an amendment to the California Constitution in 1911, first implemented in 1913. And in order to initiate a recall, the first step is to circulate the first step is actually to file a notice of intent to recall. It's got to be written in legal language. It's got to be signed by 65 voters. Must contain the name and title of the officer sought to be recalled, a statement not exceeding 200 words in length of the reasons for the recall, and the printed name, signature, and resident address of each proponent of the recall. And the proponents must publish the notice of intent in a general circulation newspaper. There are no substantive grounds for recalls. They're not specified. They can be launched to remove a corrupt official, to remove officials whose policies and performances are found wanting. And of course, the recall is one of several mechanisms for removing. There's criminal process, impeachment, term limits, and of course, the next election. Once that's accomplished and the recall petition can be circulated, petitions for the recall of state officials must be signed by voters equal in number to 12% of the last vote for that office. This gets a little complicated, by the way. Listen closely. So, must be signed by voters equal to, in number, to 12% of the last vote for that office, in this case, the vote for governor. It must include voters from each of 5 counties equal in number to 1% of the last vote for that office, for the office in that county, which means you can't get all your petitions from one county. And yeah, that's for the governor, and that's true of most recalls. But petitions for state legislators have to be 20% of the last vote for that office. The proponents of the recall must file all parts of the recall petition at the same time, which means as you gather signatures, they all have to be submitted at the same time. Each petition form for a recall petition has to be filed with the elections office official of the county in which it was circulated. And then the county electors verify the signatures that are submitted to it, and they report to the Secretary of State on the status of the signatures committed. They do that every 30 days. If the recall is successful, that is, the petition is successful. No, if the recall itself is successful, it'll be announced 38 days after the election, and the governor will assume office then. Again, if the petition signatures are sufficient, the elections official must present his findings to the relevant governing body at its next regular meeting. The relevant governing body must call for an election within 14 days after the meeting at which the certificate of sufficiency for the recall petition is presented. And the election must be held between 88 and 125 days from the meeting in which the election was called for. If a regularly scheduled election is already scheduled during this time period, the recall question must appear in the scheduled election. If no election is scheduled, a special election will be called for. Are there any questions about that? Oh, good. I was hoping there wouldn't be. Every candidate that wants to be considered to replace the official against whom the recall is sought must submit the standard nomination papers and declaration of candidacy at least 59 days before the date of the recall election. Write-in candidates must file a statement of write-in candidacy, which means you can't just write in, well, you can write in anyone, but it won't be counted unless that person has submitted a statement of write-in candidacy. And then it has to be submitted to the county elections official of the candidate's county of residence by August 31st. That's this coming Monday. Tuesday, excuse me. And my source didn't say that, but apparently that is 2 weeks before the election. I would point out also that I was looking to see who is eligible for write-in candidacy, and that won't be published until like 3 days after the deadline for the submission for write-in candidacy. So we won't know who's eligible for write-in until, have I got that written down here? Well, I guess until September the 3rd. Okay, that's how it's done. There have been a lot of objections to the this procedure, primarily in that there are generally a lot of people on the ballot who are willing to take the place of the existing governor, and they would get, if the governor is recalled, they would get in with a simple, what's the word, plurality? Whoever has the most votes will become the next governor. At present, there are 46 candidates on the ballot. That sounds like a lot, but in the last election, 2003, there were 135 candidates. There are a couple differences here. One is the fact that we have fewer candidates, and the reason for that is there had been a state law passed that said any candidate must submit their tax returns for the past 5 years. But the courts declared that that was not applicable. But that occurred rather late, so it probably cut down the number of applicants. That being said, at present, Carl, can you give me the latest poll numbers on the candidates? You're muted.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll do that. So I guess I can share screen. Whoops. You have to give me permission.
Hold on, I got to set that up. Give me a second.
Okay.
Oh, they changed this. Can you do it now?
Let's try it. Yep, looks like I can. First thing I got to do though is I got to get it up. Hold on a second here. was a little bit ahead of myself. I didn't think Alex was calling me so soon.
Oh,
Hold on a sec here. Nope, not that one. This one. Okay, so this one here. Okay, so here we go. Share screen. Ooh, here it is. So this is from 538.com. And so it's kind of their aggregate opinion. And then down below, there's a bunch of unique individual ones. But it shows, this is doesn't show the vote yes or no. Let me see where that is. Let me see. Yeah, here is the the aggregate that they have for keep or don't keep. So you can see that he's been in the lead, but it's been kind of neck and neck, and then now it's a little bit more. He's a little more in the lead. But and that's a keep Newsom, right? And some of the tricks that some of these people do is they make it vote no when you mean yes. So they're saying keep him, it says remove him. So and then you can see this is the A screen, they call it, or whatever. And if you, let me see if I click on one of these here, which one is this one? Nah, that's too complicated to read. Let's get away from that one. Anyway, and then so if you go down here, which is more interest, what would happen if he got rejected? And so it shows Elder in the lead with Paffrath, this young guy, well under him at the present time. And so I guess, and then this fella Cox, he's diminishing now. As I said, I think he had a heart attack, and all he's done is running ads. But this one here, if you look, this is the A-rated one here, and it shows all the candidates, and this shows you what percentages they measured as of Friday. So
this went
Paffrath, yeah,
actually,
in the lead.
yeah.
I suspect it's going to be a tight race. So, okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now.
Yeah. So actually, all the top 6 or 7 leading candidates are Republican, except for Paffrath. It's going to take a lot to get used to that name if we have to.
So I have Paffrath's like announcement video, which is the best thing I can find to a commercial, I guess. It's only about a minute long, queued up. I don't know if anybody has the other candidates commercials or anything. I don't know if you want to show that.
We're really interested in.
Well, let me look while you're showing the other one.
Should I go ahead and show that one?
Why not?
Okay.
By the way, we're not endorsing him. We're just showing his video.
Yes, exactly. Just showing for information purposes. Hopefully everybody can see it.
You might not know that I've been together with my wife for 13 years. I'm also a dad. I have 2 beautiful young boys, 3 and 5, Jack and Max, and I'm concerned about what the future of California is going to look like for them. There's still time to fix California for them, but quite frankly, we need emergency action to start repairing California now, especially for those who are struggling. I'm personally seeking to be your governor to implement emergency action that will streamline our ability to solve homelessness, housing, traffic, schooling, and crime problems that we have in the state. My background is in law enforcement. I have an educational background in economics, accounting, and political science from the University of California at Los Angeles. And for a living, I teach wealth building and financial education on YouTube. And I know that the problems we have in California are difficult, but they're very similar to my background. And I realize that all of these are interconnected.
Okay. He has longer videos, and I'll post.
Yeah, there's some comments in the chat if you want to look at some of the other candidates. There are links to that. Oh. It's only just point that over the years, I think the first attempt at a recall was back in 1939 against Governor Colbert Olson, who I've never heard of before. But there are 5 attempts to recall him. And then they tend to go on. There was an attempt to recall Ronald Reagan. Jerry Brown and Jerry Brown Jr. both had attempts at recall. Duke Majan had 10 attempts. And of course, Gray Davis was the first one that actually made it to the ballot. And there were several attempts to recall his successor, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So this is the second recall attempt to make the ballot in California. Information I've got on Elder, who is a leading candidate, and it says here it's at 23%, which I think is the same number I saw in your graph, Carl. Since July's poll, says he's a plurality of the Republicans and nearly a third of independents plan on voting for Elder. And a majority of Trump voters are planning to vote for Elder. Okay, there have been attempts to modify the recall procedure. There's some minor things. There was a bill put forward by, I forget, one of the candidates that would allow them to access the names of the people who signed the recall petition. That was withdrawn on the grounds that it amounted to voter intimidation. There's also a bill to allow the governor to run against, to be on the list of candidates, replacement candidates, and that has not passed. It's still in legislation, I think. And there are several comments about how to fix this. The concern being that we'd stand a good chance of getting a governor who has considerably less popular support than the governor we're removing. And it's a difficult problem. You know, the one suggestion is to do away with the first part of the ballot. The ballot has 2 parts. One is, do you want to recall the governor? And the other one, if you recall him, these are the choices for replacement. One is just drop the first half and say, here's a recall. The governor is a candidate for basically retaining his office. And the objection to that, of course, is that while there might be a lot of attempts to, there might be a lot of dissatisfaction with the governor. He's got the name recognition. It's hard to get past him as having the plurality. Another suggestion I'd heard was that just leave it as a simple recall, and if he's recalled, the lieutenant governor will replace him. There's actually been one attempt under what's the name? Duke Majan to recall the lieutenant governor. I don't recall his name, but I do recall that at the time there was some disagreement between them, and every time Duke Majan left the state, the lieutenant governor would declare himself to be in charge. The thing is, the lieutenant governor is not necessarily the same party as the governor. They're actually elected independently. They don't run as a ticket. So it's not unreasonable to have the governor removed and the lieutenant governor take his place. Is anyone aware of any other suggestion? Oh, there was one in the paper Friday, which also suggested that what I had said earlier, that let the governor run as a possible replacement for himself, take out the first half of the ballot off, and I forget the term, plurality vote. So you actually rate the candidates as to how much you like them. And it's that system where the first candidate to not get enough, the one with the lowest votes, he's removed from the tickets, and your second choice, if that was your choice, you go to your second choice, and so on. Which is sounds like a good idea, but it hasn't been done much, and I kind of worry that it'll be more confusing to the California voters in a straight vote on who you want.
Hey, Alex, we got a number of people with their hands up.
Oh, great. Sorry, I'm getting desperate. Susan or Roy? Oops, I just unmuted someone accidentally. If your hand was up, you might want to re-raise it.
Okay, I got it. I think both Roy and I are sort of, wanted to bring it a little higher level than the detail of the candidates themselves and understand what we've gone through this last few weeks. One of them was, I have contacts with the League of Women Voters, and their promotion is to vote on both questions. When I contacted them, they said, I said, well, what is the Democratic Party doing? And she said, well, contact the Democratic Party. So I did. And I talked to somebody on the phone, and she was like a little robotic to me, saying, okay, all we're doing is voting no on number one, and that's it. I said, well, that's in conflict with the other thing. And, it's like, my feeling is we should be just saying, get out and vote, because we have a majority in the state. And I don't know if that's a strong effort on the Democratic Party side at this point. It doesn't seem, I've seen all their literature. I see the door hangers and the things that you put on your lawn, the lawn signs, and they're all saying just no on recall. That's it. It's not saying get out and vote, and I'm feeling that that's missing in this election, because I think we need representation.
Okay, can I mention
And
that?
Roy wants to say something.
Yes, we got it made if we do one thing. Elder, I just read in the paper today, has a accusation against being a sex abuser, and he's definitely said no, that could be an issue. But if it's not an issue, we can still beat him with this algorithm. All the Democrats, and also we need to vote on two. All the Democrats the Democratic candidates have a caucus. This is almost like a general election, not a recall, but a general election. If they had a caucus and all agree that one of them is the only one represented. Now, we can't take them off the ballot now. It's illegal to do that. But if we have enough time between now and September 14th, September 10th is too late. We have to do it before the 10th, is have that caucus, and at least a week before that, have the caucus agree on one and then promote that one throughout the state. We will win. I almost guarantee that. Obviously, we can't guarantee anything in life, but it's damn close to winning. We went to the Democratic in person and not over the phone. We went in person and
To the Democratic Party headquarters.
yeah, Democratic.
You didn't say that.
Yeah, okay. On Parkmore or wherever that street is, and there was 3 or 4 representatives there. One of them says, "You've got exactly what we need to do, but how are we going to implement it?" And I had to leave because the other two said, we're not paying attention to what you're saying, Mr. Elder.
I want to rebut that a little bit because we're already seeing in the statistics that Carl put up, PAFRAF is already, almost like the selected one.
Good for Kevin.
What?
Good for Kevin. We're hoping for Kevin.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I'm already saying it's already happening. But I still, that I just wanted to say, I think the get out and vote part is really important.
I agree that get out and vote is probably the major concern. Although I do want to point out that when you say we are the majority, you're talking about you and your friends, not the humanist community.
Well, wait a minute. I was saying that I think the Democrats are the majority in the state of California.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I meant. Not the 10 of us or 15 of us on the call.
Okay, Dana, Jerry, you're still muted. You're muted.
Okay. Okay. First of all, the thing you were talking about where you say your first choice, second choice, and all that, it's called instant runoff voting. Mm-hmm. And it's a special case of ranked choice voting, but instant runoff voting is mainly what you need to know. My understanding is the reason that there's basically so few Democrats and no well-known Democrats on the ballot is because when Davis was recalled, there were a number of people who voted for somebody else, maybe Bustamante.
Bustamante.
Yeah, and there's a belief that there were a lot of people who said yes because Bustamante was on the ballot. And so then the question is, would Davis have been recalled if there wasn't any viable Democrats? So apparently Newsom has actually discouraged Democrats from running, thinking it would hurt his chances. And there is some validity to that. And I believe that's the reason the Democratic Party is basically sticking. They're going along with Newsom and saying just vote.
Don't want to vote.
Just vote no. Just vote no and forget part two. Because I think the idea is that if a voter looks at it, well, here's a candidate I like, I'm going to say yes because that's the guy I want. In other words, they're not keeping the two independent. I don't know if I'm clear about that, but anyway, the main thing is the Democratic Party is going along with Newsom on this.
There's another thing I wanted to mention, and that is when the candidates list their party, that doesn't mean they're endorsed by the party. It just means
right.
They identify as Republican or Democrat.
Right.
Okay, Ray.
Okay, I would like to say a couple things about after we vote no, if that's what we decide to do. There's some argument that says we should vote for a most qualified candidate regardless of party. And I would like to, for purposes of information, read part of one of the candidate's statements, unless there's any objections.
Go ahead.
So this is a statement for Kevin Faulconer, and he was mayor of San Diego. And from what I can see, a lot of the candidates running don't have any political experience. And so Kevin Faulconer's got a pretty strong case in that he has had experience. And as part of his statement, he says, as San Diego mayor, I reformed government and focused on the basics, successfully reducing homelessness, balancing budgets, increasing police funding, fixing streets, without raising taxes. As governor, I will clean up unsafe homeless tent encampments with a compassionate but firm approach proven to work in San Diego, make California more affordable, starting with the largest middle-class tax cut in California history, keep Californians safe by stopping the early release of violent criminals and enforcing our laws, prioritize fire prevention, tackle our failing electrical grid, and expand water storage, keeping communities safe, power on, and water flowing. And that's kind of the middle third of his statement, which I think is particularly relevant. And I think that Gavin Newsom's strategy of not having any viable Democratic candidates may be the best approach, maybe not, I don't know. But the fact that there aren't really any Democratic candidates with experience, maybe the best approach for all voters is to vote for, if they vote no or yes, vote for the most likely candidate to be good for our state.
Okay, yeah. I think part of the reason the Democrats aren't suggesting any alternative is it implies, I think, that maybe there's not all that much support for Newsom within the Democratic Party. So that's why they don't want to do that. Okay, George Kane, you have your hand up?
Thank you. I'm from out of state, and so there's some things in this recall that are just absolutely bewildering, it seems to me. Yes. I looked at the candidates who are running, and there were, I think, 28 Republicans and 8 Democrats, a lot of candidates with no party stated. And I'm wondering, does that mean anything special? Are they limited in the parties that they can name to parties that are certified for the California ballot or something? But there are 2 Greens, 1 Libertarian. But I'm surprised that this is not a tremendous opportunity for anti-capitalist parties to run candidates. And there may be they may be able to get together and back a left-wing progressive candidate and get them elected. So I did look up the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America website, and they said, just getting the election on the recall on the ballot is a big Republican success, largely funded out of state, and that the DSA's position is not to waste any time on this recall election. And it just bewilders me. Why is there no left-wing presence other than 2 Greens?
Yeah, I don't know.
If anyone knows, I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah, if you have a suggested answer to that, why don't you raise your hand? In the meantime, Dick Hewitson. Did we lose you?
Yeah, as usual, I'm in a totally different camp, partly because I'm not a Democrat.
Yeah.
But I have taken this seriously from the beginning, and from the very beginning have felt that the most important thing is to vote for one of the candidates, because if Newsom is recalled, we're going to be stuck with whoever gets the vote. And it sort of amazes me how most people that I talk to and everything I read and so forth, that nobody seems to care very much. Now, I did my own research, and following up on what both Ray said and what George King just said, I looked at the candidates and then did some research on them. And for instance, I looked at the two Green Party candidates, and I looked them up and decided to vote for one of them. Now, I'm sorry I did that because I voted early, because last week, Channel 4 did a marvelous program where they actually interviewed the candidates that made any kind of sense at all. And why this kind of thing hasn't been done over all of this time is beyond me. But I watched that program and it was so wonderful. And from watching that program, I wish I could change my ballot because I decided from that program that the person I would vote for is Kevin Kiley, who is an assemblyman Republican. Everything he said made sense. The main thing that I was interested in is that he's concerned, as I am, that the EDD is totally non-functional. And when he was asked how he thought he could get anything done with the legislature, he said, because I'm a seasoned legislator and I'm used to working with them. And I know if we have a good plan, they're interested in following through so they can get reelected. Now, to me, that program was very helpful, but unfortunately, it was too little and too late.
Yeah. There's a lot of noise out there. Sue, Roy. You had something you wanted to say? You're still muted.
Yes, a little brevity here. And I got another point, but in my mind, as you well know, my last name is Elder. So in my mind, my objection sounds like a divorce court, elder versus elder.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my brevity. Still, no matter what we say and how we compare all of the candidates, we will have it won if amongst the candidates themselves only in the next couple of weeks or less, that they agree one of them will win. And that's all, that's the math. The math will prove itself because the Republicans are kind of divided and it only takes one over the other, one vote over the next lowest one to win. One vote, not a majority, not even a polarity, one vote. So it's in the grips of the candidates themselves. Stay tuned.
Okay, I think trying to get Democrats to cooperate might be a difficult thing.
Agreed.
I think the problem is this is, you know, I think the group that we have talking is a highly intelligent group, but we're talking about the state of California. And a lot of people are not going to read all those things that, you know, and the thing is they're so conflicting that they're not going to read it. They're going to just say, okay, I'm going to vote. That's it. Number one, I'm voting. That's it. And send it in. And I've heard that from my friends outside of this group. I just voted and I sent it in. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to read anymore. I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to see any stuff on TV or whatever. That's the thing I'm hearing from the more general people. Just a statement.
Yeah, I'm kind of waiting to see what the polls show before the election before I vote on a candidate.
Yeah, I won't vote very early either because, again, I would like to make sure my choice carries as much weight as I can make it carry, and that is having all the information I can have before I vote. And to talk to Roy's position on needing to get all but one Democrat to drop out, I've heard, talk about that on various radio shows and so on. And the reason it won't happen is because that goes against the Democratic Party's philosophy of the best way to prevent Newsom from being recalled is to make sure there are no viable candidates to replace him on the Democratic side.
Okay, Dana, Jerry.
Yeah, so on the question of why isn't there more from the left, I can't really answer that. From my perspective, only two of the parties on the ballot, the Green Party and the Peace and Freedom Party, are left. I'm a Green myself. I know very little about Peace and Freedom, and I'm not as involved in the Green Party as I used to be, so I can't even say a lot about the Green Party on this. A couple of things I can say is the highest that any Green has done that I know of was Nader got about 2.7% of the vote. That might have something to do with it. And one other thing is both the Green Party candidates are from Los Angeles County, which is the biggest county in the state. In fact, I think it accounts for about a quarter of the voters. That's all I can say about it.
Okay.
I'd say something. I'd like to thank Mr. Kane and Dick Hewitson both for bringing a different perspective to this discussion. I'm a Green too, and it's kind of a sorrow for me that being Green and the kind of things that the Greens were able to achieve in Germany, for example, was never able to come to California. And so California, which is supposedly a very liberal state, but not really, remains steadfastly Democrat.
Well, one thing on that about Germany, I'd say the main reason that the Green Party and all third parties don't do very well in the United States is because of our plurality system, the winner takes all. Green Party does well in a number of countries, and those are all countries that have a parliamentary system, so that they can get a small percentage and still get in. I think they still need to get at least 5% to get anywhere, but the Green Party has gotten as high as 10%, and in fact in Germany, and the Green Party has actually won some of the state governments. And at one point, the foreign minister of Germany was a Green. So the biggest reason is this winner-take-all system. We've got limits to two parties.
We need electoral reform before we're going to get anywhere.
And I can tell you that when I tabled through the Green Party, you wouldn't believe how many people would come up and say, I would be happy to vote for you when I think you've got a chance, but I don't think so, so I'm not. And this is a bit ironic. I mean, for all we know, there may be more people supporting the Green Party than the Democratic Party, believe it or not, if they only knew enough about it and if only gave it a chance. I'm probably going to sound like sour grapes or something here.
You're not kidding.
It's understandable, though.
So David has had his hand up for a while. David, do you have something to say?
What?
Yes, thank you, Ray. So I wanted to address George's question, and basically the situation is relating to the party identification among the candidates. Only parties that are recognized can be listed. So you have candidates who actually identify with parties like the California National Party and the American Solidarity Party and the Socialist Workers Party who are running, but because those parties are not recognized by the Secretary of State as being certified for the California ballot, they are shown as nonpartisan candidates. And so that's why you have all those nonpartisan candidates, including candidates who actually are members of a party, but since that party isn't certified by the Secretary of State, they are listed as nonpartisan candidates.
Do you know what a party has to do to be certified by the state?
I don't know the details of that, I think it involves, no, I really don't know the details. I think one could go to the Secretary of State's website, I think, to get the information on that, because I don't know the answer.
Thank you for that information.
I know a little bit about that, which is that basically to get on the ballot in the first place, you have to get a whole lot of signatures, and it's not easy to do that. And then to stay on the ballot, you need something like 2% of statewide. Like a governor's race, you need to get 2% of the number of people who ran for governor. I don't know whether it's limited to governor. It may be other statewide offices work, but basically you have to show a certain amount of support on every election or every other election. I'm done.
The grandfather clause. I wanted to ask Dick, what was the station do you remember the program you watched that had that coverage of the candidate?
It was the like the 5 o'clock news or whatever on Channel 4. And it was about a week ago. And for all I knew, I just happened to run across it in channel surfing. It was a total accident. I don't normally watch it, but I would then wish that I had been watching it, because I think they may have spent 2 or 3 days. But the point that I really am trying to make is I don't understand, in all of this stuff that's going on, why nobody is giving us that kind of information. I mean, why aren't all of the TV stations and why aren't all of the newspapers interviewing these people and find out what their stands are?
I see Jerry laughing. I think he has the answer to
Well,
that.
actually, Dana didn't know that we weren't muted, so she was laughing. I was laughing quietly. But I can't say no. Nobody's going to like my answer, which is basically the media is not interested in informing the people. I'll give you one small example.
Okay, but okay.
Go ahead.
No, the thing is, I have found this peculiar to California. There's all kinds of chit chat and talk, and Republicans are all bad, Democrats are all bad, and this is the kind of stuff the media picks up on. But the thing is, why aren't the Democrats? Why aren't the Republicans? Why aren't anybody? Why is nobody giving us any information on these people? That we have to do our own research, as Dick, did and as I did.
Dick, that will not sell life insurance. It won't sell deodorant. It won't sell real estate.
I know.
You can quit guessing.
Well, I think part of it is that Newsom has, his strategy is to suppress the other Democratic contenders. And as I said, the Democratic Party is going along with that.
Why is the Democratic Party not wanting the public to be informed?
Well, that's a good question.
Well,
I think the Democratic Party
was informed, they would make better choices. And
our whole system is run like a boxing match, There's a stronger and a weaker, and the stronger prevails, and then they desperately hold on to their advantage. Simple.
The Democratic Party wants
got his hand up.
Elected. So they'll give their candidates good points and the other candidates bad points, and that's about it.
I gave up on the Democratic.
Is why the news media isn't more impartial.
I've had my hand up for quite a while. I'm trying to figure out why people are talking over me and not raising their hands. Is this the open? Otherwise, I'll just leave. We an open forum yet?
Oh. Yes, we are.
Anyway, basically, there was a debate. I believe you said Channel 4. It was a formal debate, and Newsom did not. But among all these candidates, you could have learned about them, but nobody apparently wanted to watch a damn thing, so they had it twice, I think. But Newsom refused to take part in this so-called debate, but the other guys did. And Nancy watched it and she said it was very informative for her. Now, how come you didn't know about that? It lasted like an hour and a half or 2 hours. I don't know, something like that. Went through all the candidates, asked them questions, just like they do in a normal debate. So
I sure wish I'd known about it.
Was it all the candidates?
Yeah, because the average person doesn't give a rat's you know what about this election at all. I mean, you know, and that's the problem. The strategy the Democrats appear to me to be using is to just try to get the vote out. You know, and because they know if they get the vote out, and of course get the Democrats to vote, they don't have a problem. And because the rest of it's all being financed outside the state. But anyway, I'll get out of. I'll stop talking now. Go for it, Greg.
Okay, I just want Ray and Alex and Scott to take a look at a statement I've sent them. Tell me privately whether we should advance that statement.
Let me see. Let me read it. Right?
Well, if you agree that we should make that endorsement or statement, go ahead.
All right, let me look at it then.
But when he's reading, let me just comment that the Democratic clubs, like the Dean Club, the Peninsula Democratic Club, some other organizations like that, that are doing a lot of putting literature and hanging them on doorknobs, or, you know, and knocking on doors to encourage people to vote. So it isn't that there's nothing going on. And I think that they're mostly concentrating in the 4 or 5 largest counties in the state. And if they carry those, it will probably be sufficient, I think, is the strategy that I have any information about at all.
I think it's a good statement. I think it sums up the objections to this whole procedure.
Are there any objections to making the statement?
No.
Ray or Scott?
No.
Okay.
No,
would you like to do it, Alex or Ray?
You mean read it?
Yeah, without the substantive part.
Yeah. Ray, why don't you?
So this is a statement on the position that Greg thinks is a reasonable position to take as humanists. And I will read it. As humanists, we think that our government should serve the people and represent their needs. We favor election of qualified candidates by majority or consensus support. The current California recall process enables elections by a mere plurality with no runoff to demonstrate majority support. Thus, a small percentage of a small percentage voting can determine the winner in this recall election. This process is unlikely to elect a candidate who has the support of most of the people. We object to this process and encourage opposition to this recall and replacement of the process with a more democratic process. And I'll just make a comment on that. I think overall that sounds like a great idea. I think that it's a little bit too late to do that for this particular recall election, but I think some serious thought needs to be given to the way recall elections are defined in California.
Okay.
Dana and Jerry, you have your hand up?
Yeah, but George is ahead of me.
Okay, George.
Right. I posted in chat very early on in the meeting a question. There's an opinion piece that was written by I think a week or two ago, an opinion piece by a University of California law professor suggesting that there are reasons that the courts might consider California's recall procedure to be unconstitutional because of violation of the basic principle of one man, one vote, that it's a setup for a person with a small share of the vote to oust an incumbent with a much greater following. And I was wondering if anyone knows of other discussion on this, and is there the possibility that if Newsom is recalled, that this election could be held up in the courts for a long time?
So I'd like to ask a couple of questions on that. I tried to look at that article, and of course, being New York Times, it's behind a paywall, so I couldn't see it. And are you talking about California Constitution or U.S. Constitution?
U.S. Constitution. The argument is based largely on a couple of cases in the 60s, in which the Supreme Court ruled that it's unconstitutional for states to district such that there is an enormous difference in representation for, like one representative from a district that has 250,000 people and one from a district that has 50,000 people. So, there were two separate cases, one with reference to representation in the U.S. House of Representatives, the other in districting for state legislatures.
So this sounds like it's related to federal elections or U.S. elections, not an election that is totally within the state for a state candidate. So I don't know if it would apply.
Well, one of those cases would, I think. The one about districting for state legislatures.
Yeah, the thing is if
that's the case and the case passed, then it may be that there could be a successful legal challenge to any recall that succeeded.
I don't think so. It's no different than having 3 candidates on the ballot, and the winner will not have a majority. It would require a runoff every time that occurs.
Bill Clinton didn't have a majority, did he?
A lot of presidents do not have a majority.
And then that's a special, that's certainly not unconstitutional. It's written into the Constitution.
What they considered, the principle was unequal representation of voters, that except for the U.S. Senate, where that's written into the Constitution, that you can't structure an election such that voters have unequal votes.
But in the case of multiple candidates running for the same office, it's hard to define what unequal votes is, just because most of those voting for their candidate didn't stand a chance. Basically, the fact that it made it easy for a non-majority candidate to get in, I don't think would be enough to declare it unconstitutional.
Well,
what about our presidential election, which has, little to do with being elected by a majority of the voters?
Yeah, and the courts aren't going to touch that.
In the case of the presidential election, there is a specific method used to resolve the election. That's the Electoral College. So that's a special case.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the one man, one vote thing, I don't think there's any possibility, is there, that the person who gets the most votes on September 14th is going to be Gavin Newsom. But if that's less than a majority, he's out. And of the remaining candidates, it'll be someone who isn't going to be anywhere above 25%.
That's true. The fact that the one ousted has the most support should be considered. Okay, are there any suggestions about the best way to resolve this? How would you handle a recall election? Right. And I don't know if this is answer to that question, but I see Dana and Jerry have their hand up.
Yeah, George, I think, is making a point, which I'm not sure everybody's got, which is what's special about the recall is there may be a candidate who's got more support but won't win, which in this case is Newsom. It could be that Newsom has a lot more support than anybody else, but he loses because of this flawed process. And to me, this is what is most objectionable about this. The idea that, I mean, theoretically, when you got like 46 candidates or so, theoretically, somebody could win with 3% of the vote, even if Newsom gets 49%. I mean, this is clearly really flawed. And as far as one thing about the Constitution, the California has to abide by both the U.S. Constitution and the California Constitution. I know that when I've gone into the ROV office, and at some point when I'm doing the paperwork for running for something, I got to put up my hand and says, I swear to uphold the Constitution of California and the Constitution of the United States. So it has to abide by both. But clearly this. Oh, which gets back to which reminds me on Greg's proposed statement. Yeah, this has a plurality system. Well, almost all our elections have plurality, and therefore you could argue that all of them are flawed. But what is really special about the recall is it isn't just a plurality; it's also this unequal thing between Newsom and the others. And it would be nice if the statement reflected that. Otherwise, I'm happy with the statement. Yeah.
In an election, you've got a year ahead of time. You know what's coming up, and you start running then. This is kind of a surprise for most people. So we got an awful lot of candidates, apparently aware that whoever gets in might be a fluke, or maybe they're just doing it for the advertisement. But I mean, in the last recall, Schwarzenegger did have more than half of the of the votes of those who wanted a recall. So it wasn't quite that dramatic. He was well known, and I don't think any of the candidates running now are really well known. That makes a difference.
Schwarzenegger probably got quite a few votes from people who voted not to recall the sitting governor. So he could have gotten votes, and I'm sure did get votes from those who voted to recall the governor and those that voted against it.
Well, one thing I heard was that apparently most Democrats were not paying attention to this until recently, but the numbers have changed. They're supposed to be paying more attention now than they did a week or two ago. And Paul, I had a question about what you were saying about the local parties. Are they, you say that they are trying to do something. Are they just simply saying vote no, or are they also saying anything about how to vote on question number 2?
I do not know. I think what they're trying to do primarily is just get Democrats to go to the polls. I think it's really get out
just
the
simply
vote.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be going to a party event this afternoon. Maybe I can tell you more tomorrow.
Okay.
Consider the insanity of the situation where we're highly politically partisan and divided as a country and a state, and this process makes it easy to collect the people who think a sitting governor has done too much about something or too little about something. An alliance of the disaffected in both directions. So it's very easy to get a vote of people disappointed with the performance at various points of time. So one could easily imagine another recall to recall whoever is picked in this recall, and that it would succeed over and over again. So that doesn't seem like a sound solution to
well, it takes a while
problem.
to go through this process, at least a year. And I think the next scheduled election is 22.
Can I say something? I don't know. I have my hand up. I guess I can. I'm not muted, but I just want to say that the statement, and I read it several times that Carl put out. I mean, not Carl. Greg put out, and I think it's an excellent statement. I wish that this had been done by our group very early on this year. I don't feel it's effective at this time. It's just, it just becomes a statement. And being pragmatic, yes, I would support this statement totally. I just like in the future, can we get together earlier and do more of this kind of thing as a group to have more power? Because I think we have people in our group that are, would be good at helping with this. And, so that's my feeling about the statement. Yes, I would support it. But I think it's a lost cause at this time. And it's the recall is going, the election is going to happen, and whatever happens. I don't know if there will go to court and all those things that everyone else is saying, or a recall of the recall. Such money has been spent on this. It's outrageous.
By the way, before I call on anyone else, I want to point out that there are a lot of you out there we haven't heard from. Well, there are 13 of you out there. If you would like to speak up, you should, at the bottom of your screen, when you move the cursor there, you should see an icon that says reaction. There's a raise hands there if you'd like to say something.
Sorry,
Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I wanted to all agree with Susan's statement and to say that I think Greg's idea is a very good one, and that I think we should go ahead with it, because even if it might be late, it's at least something. But that I think what the underlying problem that I see that was brought up is that the different groups in the state are not being heard. And that suggests to me that we'd be better off with proportional representation, where various groups can join the government and always have a voice to be included in the decisions that are made. And as a long-term strategy, that's something that we should aim for.
I agree with Dana's statement, and I agree that it would better represent the diversity of views. It's a more representative than merely one person representing all.
The issue about suing on the basis of this being unconstitutional, I thought I heard a week or two ago that somebody has introduced a lawsuit into the state. I haven't heard anything since about what's happening with that. So has anybody else heard anything?
I put a link to the lawsuit in the chat.
Do you know what the status?
Is this statement going to be publicized somewhere? Are we going to put it on our website? Or what are we going to do with it?
I could put it in the newsletter.
Can we do more than that? Because that just goes,
yeah,
limited group. Can it be put on our website as a statement?
Oh yeah, we could.
Or something more, a little quicker, because the website is monthly also. That this is happening now. Yeah. If we want to talk about it behind the scenes, we can talk about it. I off the hand, I can't think of how we can do the promotion. But that's I think it needs to be out there.
Does anyone here object to having it on the website?
No.
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 Well, that's a start.
So Greg, you might consider writing a letter to the editor of the Mercury, I think.
You know, it might be something that just does get promoted somehow on our Facebook page. We also have a Facebook page. I don't know.
I think that's a great idea.
Problem to get it up any of those locations.
We can't make statements. I think it gets iffy if we do beyond, you know, make it a really public announcement to take a stand. We're a 50C3 under the tax code, and I think that'd be very, very iffy to that we're take a stand. That,
well, we're not taking a stand for or against any candidate here.
It's to the process.
Also, if we're going to put the name of the humanist community on it, I think we should run it by the board.
Isn't most of the
board
on this call?
Yeah, Paul has a point, because one could, if one wanted to, one could object that opposing the recall is effectively the same as endorsing a candidate. Yeah. So there is some risk.
So we're objecting, we're opposing the method of recall, not
that is the intent.
Paul, is it a problem for us to put it on our website as a statement?
I think for us to take an official statement is probably where it gets iffy.
Oh, I see.
I think it would be, I guess the first question is, what would be the practical effect right now?
Not much.
Would it change anybody's vote? I doubt that it would. And it's not, and it's, you know, it's not really intended to, but I would fear that it might be interpreted that way, and that might stick. I mean,
I think the problem is that it might encourage people to not vote because they're objecting to the process. They now have less votes out there. So I think the more votes is better at this point.
Yeah, I think we really, whatever happens on September, whatever it is, I think the state needs to address this whole procedure, which is bizarre, the way it's structured. And I think we'd all agree on that. And I think to be useful on that question, would be better to wait until after the election and then take a position to try to get that changed.
I agree that after the election is the time to talk about and advocate for changing the process.
I don't see any reason, any problem with recommending it now. I mean, I think a core principle of humanism is democracy. That's the will of the people. And the real question is it being served with this method of recall?
I can't imagine that there are not a huge number of lawyers in the state that would like to go after this. To suggest taking a position on it now is not partisan. Because I can imagine that Republicans, well, let's just say any unethical persons that there might be within the Republican Party would be glad we have the system that we have right now, because it's about the only way that a Republican could get elected to statewide office in California.
By the way, I wanted to comment about the idea of a parliamentary system. I think the problem is that the major parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, are pretty much geared to the present system. they feel that a parliamentary system would probably weaken their influence.
Yeah. I think the more practical approach would be to go to approval voting, which you could vote for the Greens, you could vote for the Democrats, you could vote for those that you think are worthy of support, that that you won't be apoplectic if one of them gets the best, and leave out the ones that you think are bad. I was slow to come to that position, but you'll remember that Jeff Justice made a presentation to one of our forums, and I suppose anyone's interested could go back and look at that.
Yeah, Jeff has done a couple of those presentations, and I agree that approval voting would be a drastic improvement from what we have now.
Yeah. One of the things that would clearly show is that there is a lot of support within the state for the Green Party, for other, which are very marginal at this point and don't get their voices heard. But if you could vote for, you could say, well, I have a history as a Democrat. That's where my political activity is, but there are others that I'd be perfectly happy to be in there, and they would certainly be better than what the Republican Party has become. And so if, and it would, I think that you might get 30 or 40% of Californians right now that would include the Greens or other minority parties, that those are values that they are comfortable with. But you never get to see that if you've got to vote for just one.
I'd like to follow up on a comment that Dana made earlier in the forum about the Green Party in Germany and the things they've accomplished there. Dana, do you want to comment on that a little bit?
What they've accomplished that I have.
Well, he's asking you because you were the one who made the comment. What exactly did you want to know?
Well, I think Dana said that the Greens have been successful in Germany and they've accomplished a number of things, and I'd like to know a little bit more about what their influence has been.
Well, I can't say as much as a German Green could, but they have been as high, at least as high as 10% in the parliament. They've occasionally been in coalition governments. They have actually won power in one or two of the state governments. They did get the foreign minister one time was a Green, Joschka Fischer, which we saw in San Francisco. So they've definitely had some influence there. And I think they've also had influence in Ireland and Australia and I think some other countries, I'm not sure which.
So I guess the reason for my question is, how much influence did the Green Party have on Germany's decision to get rid of nuclear and go with renewables?
Oh, I think they probably had a fair amount of that, yes.
I think getting a situation where the minority parties have a voice that's actually heard would make a difference. Right now, there are more people that are way more progressive in the Democratic Party than was true just a few years ago. And I think they don't have much influence on people that are voting Republican. But I suspect that the Democrats would be much more inclined to be friendly to some of those more progressive positions if they're in an election where it's to their advantage. Right now, nobody believes in the Democratic primary. It was Bernie Sanders in California. And so that's way, way, way more to the left than Democrats are in most places.
No, I think you're right, Paul. This winner take all. The attitude of Democrats generally is, we don't need those Greens. They've got no place else to go. So they got for Democrat, which is not true. They're wrong about that, but that's their attitude.
What prevents?
My opinion is.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was asking what prevents third parties from endorsing one of the top two parties in a coalition and obtaining some concessions as to participation in the government. This is common in parliamentary governments, but why doesn't it happen here?
Well, Bernie Sanders.
Go ahead, Paul.
In parliamentary governments, generally, one party doesn't have the majority of the seats. They have to form a coalition.
Yeah. Well, let me just make a brief statement. Bernie Sanders has made a career as a Democratic socialist by participating within the Democratic Party in the House and the Senate. And right now he chairs one of the most important committees. He has a lot of influence. And now there are more, there are a couple of smaller groups that are very progressive. And with the both the House and the Senate being so closely divided between Democrats and Republicans, they have a lot of influence, because without their votes, the Democrats cannot win a vote in the House, where they have a 3 or 4 vote margin, and that includes a couple of groups like AOC and I'm blanking. I don't do names anymore. My memory doesn't hold names anymore. But the woman from Michigan who heads that other very progressive group. And the Democrats have to have those votes to pass anything. So I should quit there.
Yeah, George says it's Omar Ilhan who's the where am I?
Right.
Ilhan Omar, excuse me, from Minnesota.
Well, she's from Minnesota.
Are you talking about the squad, which has 4 members?
Yeah.
Ilhan Omar, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and Ayanna Pressley. And I guess they've been joined by Cori Bush. There may be more. There may be more at this point, but but on that, I remember there was a time when somebody, I forget his name, in Southern California was pushing for these progressive things to not cooperate with the speaker on an issue, and they didn't. They went along with the Democratic majority. So I wish I could remember what the details were of that.
Well, I think what that was to go along with something that was more procedural than substantive. The procedural, they had to have votes to get the thing before the House, so they actually deal with it in a substantive way to authorize going ahead to write the bill. But that doesn't tie them, I think, for finally voting for the bill or not. But when it's a narrow edge that they have over the Republicans, there's the West Virginia senator and the Arizona Manchin, and the woman from Arizona, you know,
Yeah.
they hold this determinative votes in the Senate. And unfortunately, Schumer is not quite as effective sometimes as Nancy Pelosi is in the House. But minorities, we're so closely divided that minorities can make a difference if they use their power effectively.
You know, one thing that I find curious is that the Democrats and Republicans are pretty close. You know, neither one has a clear majority. But you know, Democrats usually think the Republicans are so awful. So the question is, if the Republicans are so awful, why don't the Democrats do better against the Republicans? You know,
We got
back
a lot
during
of
the
awful people.
huh?
We got a lot of awful people out there, maybe.
Well, you know, how much of it is the voters' fault and how much of it is the candidate's fault? You know,
That's
back
above
during
my pay grade.
you know, back in the 40s, the 30s, 40s, 50s, the Democrats were usually in the lead, not always, but they were usually way ahead of the Republicans. Why? Because they basically gave the voters what they wanted. I think the problem is they're not really doing so much for the voters now. You know, my impression is a lot of the time when Democrats are saying, you got to vote for me, what they're really saying is, you got to vote for me because the other guy's even worse. Not that I'm so great, but he's terrible. That's not a good way to go.
Yeah,
One might appreciate the critique in Listen Liberal by Thomas Frank.
I hope
his assertion is that the Democratic Party has not served the working class in past recent decades.
Amen.
Yeah, I read that book.
That's one opinion that might be worth considering.
You're talking about the guy who his first book was something, What's the Matter with Kansas?
Correct.
Yep.
Are we really done with the recall election? Have we said everything there is to say about it?
Well, we could say of the candidates other than Newsom, who would you like to see? Who would you be willing to vote for and why? I don't know. I mean, I'm inclined to say, what's his name? Half-ass? Whatever his name is.
What'd you call him? Half-ass? What'd you call him?
Yeah,
Pack-rat.
Half-ass. P-A-F.
Half-rat. Half-rat.
Pack-rat.
I like Pack-rat. I think that's good. My own view on this thing is it seems very likely that if the recall vote is yes, that Elder's going to get elected. He's so far ahead, so way far ahead.
Well, according to the polls Carl showed earlier, Pack-rat is ahead of him.
Not ahead of Elder.
Yeah.
Well, I want to see that again. I thought I saw that Elder had like around 20-some%, and Pack-rat was around 9%, and Cox was around 6%.
I think Carl is left, so we don't.
Yeah.
He's had enough of our anarchy, I guess.
Yes. His last comment was to correctly split infinitive in his last statement. Having done that, he left.
I think Jerry is right that who was Elder was way ahead. Also, I think Greg dropped a link to that same poll in the chat, but a while ago.
538.
538. What's that?
It's the number of electoral votes.
See if I can find that.
What happened with the statement we were going to make on the website?
I think it got postponed until
That's turned into a very heavy debate about whether we should do it.
What's the point of it then?
Well, it might go up on our face.
Oh gosh, the humanist is so important. And everyone's waiting for the humanist website to say something.
We're unmuted right now. Keep going, keep going.
There you go. Now, was there a more recent one? Those are the numbers I remember seeing, but they
5 days ago, August 24th.
Yeah, but I think there was another one from this past Friday that.
I was hoping you were going to do that.
I think I'm going to say goodbye for today, and I've got Labor Day weekend plans, so I'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Oh, all right.
I would like. Thanks for coming, Ray.
Bye.
Yep. Have fun.
Ray, we'll miss you. I would like to say something. I think the emphasis now before the election has to be getting out the vote. And if we don't want to be partisan, then we just say get out the vote. But that's more important. If we end up with a Republican governor, he's going to have a lot to say about the state, and we're not a red state. To take a chance on being governed by a red state governor, we've got too many of those in the country already, and we should do everything we can to prevent us having another one. I really think that people are not as eager to vote as you would think they would be, because they don't really understand the repercussions of having a Republican governor. They can make a lot of changes. And anyway, I guess that's my point. It's the time to talk about, let's try some other methods, maybe after we get this one to succeed.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree that it's appropriate for us to encourage participation and getting informed before participating.
I have some. Are we unmuted?
We are
unmuted. Yes.
We can't hear you, Dan.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm very disappointed that we're not going to put something up on the website indicating that we think that this election process is very flawed, and that would prompt people to maybe do what Senna has suggested, get more involved, because I feel like it's I mean, maybe we're skirting some danger with whoever the government, but you know, it seems like our state is very important. So many people live here, and I think the humanist community is a very thoughtful group, and that their opinion, even though maybe not very many people belong, actually is important. And I would really like to see us get it out there. And I can't see really what harm it would be to put a statement up on the website that, such as Greg suggested. And I to let it go until after the election, I mean, what would be the point really then? I don't know. I mean, I suppose it would have some educational value, but I mean, if we're going to actually do something about the election, that's something we could do.
I agree. And I think that the concerns about it are first that it'll be seen as being against the Republican Party, because we're saying it's kind of rigged that way. But also it's against the Democratic Party because it might discourage people from voting at all.
That's right. Yeah. And actually, isn't most of the board here? Or they were anyway.
They were.
So far,
yeah.
so with us.
The board can discuss it further. So the topic is raised as an issue, and And
But
we'll
the
see if
board's
we can do
not gonna
something that makes more sense.
But Greg, they're not going to do that until the 20th of September.
After the election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Well,
need a special board meeting
Well,
in 5 minutes.
it's an option to hold a virtual board meeting.
Yeah.
How many people are on the board? No, I want a number. What's the, is it 7?
Raise your hand. Yes, how many people on the board? You're on the board, right?
Yes, but there's
I wanted to know, I didn't say who's on the board. I want to know how many are on the board.
I think it's 7, isn't it?
Okay, and how many members of the board are here?
4.
Okay, then for you to discuss in violation of the Brown Act.
Is Matt still on the board?
Yes.
So that's
I mean,
5.
if you, you know about the Brown Act, and I believe this is a violation of the Brown Act to discuss it now.
Does that say that board meetings have to be?
It has to be. It has to be less than if it's outside of the formal process. People can talk as long as it's less than a majority, and you have a majority here.
No. So
it's unfair to those who are not here. So call up Ray and whoever else and tell them to get back on.
I think I would read it again very, very carefully and maybe get some professional advice. I don't think it would make that much difference. I think the importance of bringing it up is to change it. I would certainly support activity to change the system, but we're stuck with the system, and I think it's always patriotic to just say vote. And I would rather have the emphasis on getting people to be responsible, participating citizens and go vote. This election is also important, and like every other election. And I can imagine that somebody out there would see it as being partisan and make trouble for us. I doubt that.
I don't think they can make trouble for us. I mean, they would have to get a lawyer to agree and a judge to agree to make trouble.
Well, if they just brought a suit, we would have to defend it.
We'll countersue
in court that this church is acting like a political party.
I think even the courts don't just take any lawsuit that someone brings up. There have to be, well, first of all, it should probably have to be supported by a lawyer, and the lawyer is putting himself on the line if he brings up a frivolous suit.
Still, there are organizations with more money than we have who might want us to struggle with that. So it's not wise to do things that aren't consistent with our status.
It is wise, though, to tell the truth and stand up for our principles.
Well, that's a competing value we have to balance. Yes.
Well, I don't think anyone can justifiably argue that this is a partisan statement.
Why is it partisan when we're criticizing a process rather than a party?
Well, we'd be criticizing a policy, and I think it could be interpreted.
I don't think it's an official policy of either the Democratic or the Republican Party.
I think we should live dangerously.
I think we can discuss it and possibly come up with language that will reduce our risk and still make an impact.
Yeah. I would say a statement that encourages people to vote.
That's certainly valid.
That too, but that's a different statement entirely.
But it's most important is to get out the vote. And ask her what if we don't like what happened, then we can talk about what we'd like instead.
Maybe, but if we see problems with the way things are, we should point them out immediately.
You know, I mean, a statement about that would promote some thought, you know, and maybe promoting some thought would promote some action.
Yes.
So,
well, the last sentence says we object to this process. So we're taking a position on.
We're not saying we object. We're saying we think the process is flawed for the following reasons.
Well, it says we object to this process and encourage opposition to this recall. That's pretty clear.
We're not okay. Can't we tweak the language a little bit?
Well, I would tweak it sufficiently that I would tweak it very carefully. And I'm 100% in favor of urging people to vote. But I would want to be very careful. For example, the sentence that I just read, this process is unlikely to elect a candidate who has the support of most of the people, including those of us who are writing this sentence. And I think I would say read it critically and then adopt something that would encourage people to vote. Just being very careful. I don't want to be the stick in the mud. I do want to be the stick in the mud down here, but this is not one of them.
I like the statement as written before Greg corrected the split infinitive.
Anti-grammatical, huh?
Yeah.
He ain't following nobody's rules.
If the plurality of the words parse.
Okay, I'll look it over.
Well, let me make one further statement. If giving up our nonprofit status would be the difference in the outcome of the election, I would say go for it.
Yeah,
we don't have as much influence as we would like.
Right.
I don't think our status is in jeopardy, would be in jeopardy. From this.
I think you're right there too, but I'd rather not get involved in an answer. I don't know, maybe the publicity would be good for us.
Well,
so what's
like
the?
I said, we can discuss it offline after this.
Yeah, that'd be the better thing. Otherwise, I'd be a part of the conversation. And that's not a good thing, probably at this point.
Right.
Contrary.
We need some people who are absolved of this in case it's a fiasco, and then they can carry on.
Okay, well, in that case, maybe I'll slip away. I've done as much harm as I can here, so I'll just move on.
So you don't think the humanist community could change the results of the recall election, huh?
I hope it's not that close.
If we put all our weight behind a candidate, we could
either yes or no, or behind a candidate or against. I mean, who knows? Maybe if there might be people out there says the humanist community says let's do this, we're going to do the opposite.
Alex, thank you for that presentation. It was clearly effective because no one had any questions afterwards when you asked for it.